So it takes like 5 minutes to get our water ready for sparging. And then we're gonna go ahead and test our mash. Give it a good stir. The color looks really, really good. Alright, we didn't rise at all, really. It's got good flavor. Just go at like five bricks or so.
Probably 10, 20.
Yep. Unless the yeast eats all the sugar. So what I like to do instead of getting my Chris did a very good presentation on adding dry malt extract. Thanks. And I believe him with this. If you add it to hot wort, it's just gonna clump up real good. So I end up adding it to my boil before my mash goes in. There we go. So this is taking like the concentrated grains
and it's almost like the old-fashioned coffee percolator. You're going to rerun it through the mash, through the grain.
Absolutely.
What he's actually doing is setting up it's called a grain bed filter. You're setting up the husks. That's why when you mill the grains, you don't mill them to a powder. You just crack the grains because you want the husks left, and they create a filter. Right. And the reason why you separate them is, and the reason why he doesn't go over 180 degrees with the sparge water is, once you get over 180 degrees, you start extracting tannins. Tannins give you astringency. I don't know if you've ever chewed on a grape leaf or a grape skin or a tea leaf. Yeah, they'll give you astringency, and you don't want that.
So our tanning back.
Yeah.
As he pointed out last time, it's only 170 something degrees. It's not boiling. You know, you'll keep your skin.
Exactly.
You'll hate your skin for a while, but you'll keep it.
You'll keep it. And I do this just to get all the air bubbles come all the way back up. Do that a couple times. That's the sugar. It's like yeast food.
Yeah, exactly.
Sugar is yeast food.
So what they did was when they made that, they made the mash. They collected the water, and then they evaporated it, and all the way down to 2% water by weight, and that's what's left.
Wow. So this is taking like the concentrated grains,
and it's almost like the old-fashioned coffee percolator. You're going to rerun it through the mash, through the grain.
Absolutely.
What he's actually doing is setting up it's called a grain bed filter. You're setting up the husks. That's why when you mill the grains, you don't mill them to a powder. You just crack the grains.
It's called reverse Warloff.
Yeah, well, Vorlauf is the German word, and what it really means is to recirculate. Normally what you do is you're doing that to set up the grain bed filter. So you don't want to stir it like you were stirring it.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, how else are you going to get it past the filter?
Well,
I heard that you stir it to extract all the sugars out of the malt.
Well, there's a couple of different ways to do that.
And this is why homebrewers don't like each other's beer.
Well, the Germans do fly sparging. The old British way was called party guile, and you can just once you get it flowing, and the reason for the Vorlauf, the recirculating, is to clear the wort, because when you first do it, you're gonna get a lot of grain and stuff. It's just stuck in there, and then once it clears out, that's when you want to collect it, because a little bit of grain in your boil kettle is not bad, but if you get enough, if you're going to start extracting those tannins, because you're going to bring up 212 degrees, which is obviously above 180.
Exactly.
So,
but 171 basically extracts the sugar from the grain from a scientific standpoint.
Yeah, well, it's soluble. It gets more soluble as you raise the temperature.
And then to stir it when you're mashing out further gets that sugar out. And so to get a good efficiency on your sugar extraction from the grain, you want the right temperature, obviously. And I mean,
Do you ever measure your efficiency? Do you know what it is?
absolutely. Mine's always at 72. What Ed's talking about is, I don't know, I've a buddy of mine who taught me how to homebrew. His efficiency's at 68. And what we're talking about is actually how much actual alcohol you get from your potential gravity.
Well, I was talking about is how much sugar you're getting per pound of grain.
And I equate that into how much food the yeast has to eat.
Right, exactly.
So my efficiency is at 72%. My yeast is eating good yeast that I've extracted 70% from my wort. And a guy who taught me how to brew is still at 68. I don't know what that has to do with. I don't know what that has to do with.
Well, there's a couple different efficiencies. One is the mash efficiency, so that's how much sugar you get per pound of grain.
Yeah.
So that's your original
Your malt
gravity.
bill,
The way you
right?
measure it, right? The way you measure it is how much grain is rated at a certain amount. You usually get about 35 points of gravity per pound per gallon.
No.
And so then you can measure your original gravity, and it'll give you your extraction efficiency. Then there's also the attenuation efficiency, how much the yeast,
Tastes good.
you know, and that's the difference between original gravity and final gravity. And that's usually around 75%. That's just depends on the yeast and the temperature and the yeast nutrients, that kind of stuff.
Today we're using yeast I've never used before. So I have no idea what my attenuation, but I expect it to be the same as any other yeast that I've used. Does it smell good?
Smells
It
great.
smells like Halloween. I don't know why.
The last bit of it.
Starting to boil, the malt is about dry. Going from the mash tun to the boil kettle.